You ready to get into some ancient history today?
Always ready.
Awesome. We are going to be looking at the ancient kingdom of Kitara in East Africa.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So this is a kingdom that you may or may not have heard of, but we are going to be taking all of our information today from Kitara, A Glimpse into Ancient East Africa, a book by Melody Hope.
That's right.
And this book looks at pre-Christian East Africa, which the author calls a false utopia.
Yes. Melody Hope characterizes this time period and this society as a false utopia.
Okay, so we are going to be looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
And can you give us a little bit of background on Kitara?
So Kitara was a pretty big empire. It stretched across parts of modern-day Uganda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, and Kenya.
Okay. And so what makes it a false utopia? Well,
the stories that we're going to be looking at today depict a society where power struggles were common. And a lot of times these struggles were decided through manipulation violence. It seemed that justice could be unpredictable and human life was not always valued as it is today.
Oh, wow. So not exactly what we would think of when we think about a utopia.
Right.
All right. Well, let's get into the story. We're looking specifically at this guy. Bukuku is a pretty enigmatic figure. We're going to be using some excerpts from a book chapter that really goes into his story. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like the King Arthur of this region, shrouded in mystery. Historians are always debating all the different aspects of his life. Mm-hmm. And his story has a ton of twists and turns.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, our main source material here is oral tradition.
Right.
So these stories have been passed down for generations. And you can imagine with each retelling, little details might change, a little spin might be added. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting to look at how history can be interpreted and reinterpreted over time.
That's a really good point. It's not like we have like a firsthand account from Bukuku himself or something. So
yeah, and it's interesting. We start off with what seems like a pretty ordinary guy, Bukuku, who's a loyal gateman to the king, King Ezarzar.
Who are some of the main players here?
Well, we have a King Ezarza of Kitara.
Okay.
He was a young ruler, charismatic, but the stories describe him as being more interested in hunting and pleasure than the burdens of leadership.
Sounds like kind of a playboy king then, huh?
You could say that. And then we have his rival, King Nyamyonga,
okay,
who ruled a kingdom to the south, possibly what is modern-day Rwanda.
Gotcha.
And King Nyamyonga was a powerful sorcerer. He was feared for his magical abilities.
And I understand that his name means darkness or soot in the local dialect.
Yes, that's right.
Wow. So that kind of gives you a picture right off the bat of the kind of person we are dealing with here.
Absolutely.
All right. So we have our carefree king, and we have this dark sorcerer. Mm-hmm. I can already sense the conflict brewing.
Yes. There was certainly tension between them. Nyamyonga wanted to expand his power, and he thought that Kitara was the ultimate prize. So he tried to trap King Ezarza in a mukago.
Mukago? What is that?
A mukago is a blood pact. It's very significant in their culture. Yep. And basically it creates an unbreakable bond between two people. They become blood brothers.
Okay, so Nyamyonga was trying to trick Ezarza into becoming blood brothers with him.
Yes. With all of the obligations and implications that came with that, you can imagine the advantage he would have over Ezarza if he had succeeded.
Yeah, I bet that would have given him a lot of leverage. So was Ezarza aware of what Nyamyonga was trying to do?
He was. He had some wise counsel. He refused it, but not directly. He sent his servant Bukuku to enter into the mukago in his place.
He sent his servant. Wow. That's a huge diss. I can't imagine Nyamyonga was too happy about that.
He was not. It was a big blow to his pride and his ambitions. And so he swore revenge on Ezarza.
So how did he try to get his revenge?
Well, instead of just unleashing his sorcery or attacking Kitara directly, he chose a more cunning route. He sent his daughter Nyamata to Kitara. Okay.
And who was she?
She was known for her beauty and her intelligence. Her name actually means beauty as pure as milk in their society.
Okay.
She was supposed to captivate Ezarza, seduce him, and then lure him south right into Nyamyonga's clutches.
Wow. So she was basically like a spy, a honey trap.
Exactly. And it seems that Bukuku, the same servant who entered the blood pact, was actually the one who introduced Nyamata to Ezarza.
Really? That's a pretty big coincidence.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
It does make you wonder if maybe Bukuku was already under Nyamyonga's influence because of that mukago, or if this was all part of a larger plan.
Yeah, for sure. So was Nyamata successful? Did she manage to seduce Ezarza?
She did captivate him, and they even had a son together.
Right.
However, she wasn't able to convince him to leave Kitara. You see, Ezarza was really attached to his cattle. Anyway, Nyamata got frustrated, and she asked to return home. Ezarza let her go. He sent her off with some royal guards, but when they reached Karaijaya Rock, which was the border between the two kingdoms, she vanished.
Vanished. What do you mean by that?
Well, in the oral traditions of Kitara, vanishing doesn't always mean death, although sometimes it can. It often refers to crossing over into enemy territory, whether through capture or by some other means.
All right, so we have a missing princess, we have a king who's totally obsessed with his cattle, and we have a vengeful sorcerer who is out there somewhere plotting his revenge.
That's a pretty good summary.
What happened next?
Well, Nyamyonga, knowing Izarza's weakness, decided to use it against him. He sent 2 of his own prize cattle into Izarza's royal herd.
Oh, he did?
He did. And Izarza, being so obsessed with his cattle, was completely captivated by these new additions. He spent all of his time tending to them. And he had no idea about the danger that was coming.
I bet he didn't. What happened?
Well, one morning, the 2 cattle vanished.
So they were just bait all along.
Pretty much.
Did Izarza put 2 and 2 together?
Well, no. He was so fixated on these cattle that he set off in pursuit of them. He left Kitara and followed their trail south right to the spot where Nyamata had disappeared.
And I bet he vanished too.
You would be correct. He disappeared as well.
Oh, man. So he totally fell for it. But didn't he have a son? What about the royal stool? Did you just leave that behind?
He did leave a son, Rabonda. And yes, before leaving, he entrusted the royal stool, which was the symbol of his authority, to his servant, Bukuku.
So Bukuku the servant is now in charge of the kingdom.
That's right. And this is really interesting because it shows us how strict the caste system was in Kitara. Even though Bukuku was now holding this very important position, he was still expected to be subservient because he was not a pastoralist.
He wasn't part of the cattle herding elite.
Exactly.
Okay, so what happened next? Did Bukuku try to return the stool to Izarza's son?
Well, that is where things get even more complicated.
All right, well, I'm very curious to hear what happened.
Rabonda knew that whoever held the royal stool was likely to become the next king. So he tried to take it from Bukuku.
By force?
Yeah, he tried to take it by force.
And how did that go? Did Bukuku just hand it over?
Oh, no, he did not. He refused to hand it over.
Wow, he defied the prince. That's pretty bold.
Right.
What was his reasoning for that?
Since he had entered into the Mukago with Nyamyonga, and Nyamyonga was a king, that somehow elevated his own status and made him eligible for the throne.
Oh, wow. So that blood pact that was meant to trap Izarza ended up giving his servant the justification to seize power for himself.
Right.
That's crazy. But did the people of Kitara actually accept him as their new ruler?
Not really. Kitara was a very stratified society, and the idea of a non-pastoralist leader was shocking to most people.
Yeah, it went against everything they knew.
Right. And so Bukuku's declaration caused a lot of unrest.
Oh, I bet. So what happened next?
Well, Bukuku realized that he was in a dangerous position, so he decided to appeal to the lower classes, the people who had always been marginalized by the pastoralist elite.
Okay, so he's trying to gain support from the people who had no power under the old system.
Exactly. He declared himself Mukama, and this basically sparked a social revolution.
Wow, so Bukuku the servant became a revolutionary leader. That's amazing. Did his revolution succeed?
Well, the oral traditions don't give us a ton of detail about the actual battles that were fought.
Okay.
We know that there was a lot of chaos going on, people stealing cattle, fleeing their homes, seeking refuge with Kagire.
Oh, wow. So things were really falling apart.
Yeah. But the details about Bukuku's fight against the traditional powers are unclear.
It's like a missing chapter in the story.
Right. But we do know that he ultimately emerged victorious. He became the new Mukama.
Okay. But it sounds like it was a pretty unstable victory.
Yeah, Kitara was fractured at that point.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the counties refused to follow a non-pastoralist leader.
So he won the battle, but lost the war in a way.
You could say that. But even though his reign was short, he did have a lasting impact.
Yeah, how so?
Well, he challenged the caste system and showed that anyone, even someone from the lowest rank, could become the ruler. And he was actually the first Mukama whose death was acknowledged.
What do you mean by that?
Well, previous rulers were seen as almost godlike figures.
Okay.
And when they died, it was recorded as a vanishing.
A vanishing?
Uh-huh. Like they just disappeared. It was a way of maintaining the illusion of their divine power.
Wow. That's fascinating. So Bukuku was the first ruler who was treated like a normal person even in death.
Right. It shows how much things had changed.
So what about his daughter, Ninamwiru? What happened to her?
That's a really sad story.
Yeah.
She was born with this eye defect, and the Choizi declared her to be cursed.
Oh, no. So the sorcerers are back in the picture.
They never really left.
True. So what did they say her curse was?
They said that any son she had would eventually kill Bukuku.
Wow. Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. How did Bukuku react to that?
He totally freaked out. He was terrified of this prophecy. And instead of questioning it or the motives of the Chiwezi, he decided to isolate Ninamwiru. He kept her away from any potential husbands. But it didn't really work out that way.
Did she end up having a son anyway?
She did.
Even though she was isolated?
Yeah. A handsome stranger named Isimwa found his way to her.
Isimwa? Wait a minute. Isn't that the name of Namada and Asarza's son?
Yes, that's right. He eventually made his way to Kitara, and somehow he met Ninamwiru.
So the son of the king Bukuku betrayed ends up having a child with his daughter.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Ninamwiru becomes pregnant, but Isimwa, true to his opportunistic nature, abandons her, leaving her alone to face the consequences.
Oh my gosh, that's cold.
Yeah.
Abandoned by the man who used her, imprisoned by her father, and carrying the child. That's prophesied to bring about her father's demise. How did she even navigate this impossible situation?
Well, maybe. So she kept it a secret.
But of course, secrets never stay secret forever, especially in a place like Kitara.
Exactly. So eventually Bukuku found out.
I bet he was furious.
He was. And he was still terrified of that prophecy, so he ordered his guards to kill the child.
Oh my gosh. He tried to have his own grandson killed. That's horrible.
It was a really dark time, but the guards didn't actually kill the baby. They abandoned him out in the wilderness.
So there was still some good in them.
Yeah. And luckily for the baby, he was found by a potter named Rubumbi, who took him in and raised him as his own son. And it gets even more interesting from here. Karabumbi, growing up as a potter's son, developed into a pretty rebellious young man, always challenging authority.
I guess that's not too surprising, given the circumstances of his birth and, maybe he was sensing his true heritage in a way. So how did he go from being this rebellious kid to actually confronting the king?
Karabumbi was known for his defiance, and he kept challenging Bukuku's herdsmen. He even went so far as to disrupt the royal cattle.
Oh, wow. So he was messing with Bukuku's most prized possessions. That must have made Bukuku pretty angry.
Oh, yeah, Bukuku was furious. And he decided to confront Karabumbi himself. He brought the royal stool with him, to show everyone who was in charge.
So the king goes to confront his own grandson with the symbol of the throne. That's an incredible image.
It really is. And it's like Bukuku was completely blind to the danger right in front of him. He just saw Karabumbi as this annoying kid, not the heir who could take everything from him.
It's almost like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
The king is brought down by his own bloodline. But did Karabumbi know who Bukuku was? Did he realize he was facing his own grandfather?
The stories don't really tell us if he knew at that moment. But regardless of that, Karabumbi was not backing down. He grabbed Bukuku's spear and killed him right then and there.
He just killed him.
Wow.
So the prophecy was fulfilled, but not in the way anyone probably expected. So what happened next? Did Karabumbi take the throne?
He did. He took the royal stool and declared himself the new Mukama of Kitara. He took the name Indahura.
Wow. The abandoned prince raised as a potter's son.
That's right.
This whole story is just incredible. It's like something out of a movie or a novel. But it makes you wonder, was this all orchestrated by the Chiwezi? They're the ones who declared Ninamwiru cursed and set this whole chain of events in motion.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think, did they manipulate everything to get rid of Bukuku and install a ruler who would be more favorable to them?
He challenged the established order and they couldn't have that.
Right. Maybe they used Ninamwiru and the prophecy as pawns in their game.
That's a chilling thought. So looking back, how was Bukuku remembered? Is he a hero, a villain, or something in between?
It's hard to, categorize him neatly. He's this complex figure, a product of his time, and yet someone who dared to challenge the very foundation of his society. So, to some, he's a traitor.
Right.
A usurper who betrayed his king and caused all this chaos, but to others, he's a liberator, a symbol of hope for the oppressed, cultivator class.
But I guess that's the thing about history. We can never really know for sure what happened or why, but we can look at the evidence and try to piece together the story.
Exactly. And these oral traditions, they give us a glimpse into the past, but they also leave a lot of room for interpretation.
Yeah. There's so much we still don't know about Kitara and the Chiwezi and all the players in this story.
That's what makes it so fascinating.
Well, this has been one heck of a deep dive, folks. We've gone from a playboy king to a blood pact, to a missing princess, to a social revolution, to a prophecy of death and betrayal.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And I think it just goes to show that history is so much more than just dates and names. It's about the stories of the people who lived through these events, the choices they made, the challenges they faced,
and the legacies they left behind.
Exactly. So if you're interested in learning more about this fascinating period of history, I highly recommend checking out Kitara, A Glimpse into Ancient East Africa by Melody Hope. It's a real page-turner. And who knows, maybe you'll come up with your own theories about what really happened in the kingdom of Kitara. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.